Hi, this is Nilgün Zahour from SM JUROR, and today we're going to be looking at the juror misconduct issues in the case of Porter versus Zook, which is from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. This is a capital murder case for the murder of a Norfolk, Virginia police officer, Officer Reeves. In this case, we're going to focus on two issues. First, what is involved in proving a claim for actual bias? And second, is an evidentiary hearing required in an actual bias claim where it's discovered that a juror did not disclose a material relationship? Now, this case was moved from Norfolk to Arlington due to media coverage for the shooting of a police officer. Potential jurors were asked this question from defense counsel at voir dire. Have you, any member of your family or close personal friend, worked for or with any law enforcement organization, either as an employee or on a voluntary basis? The juror involved, Juror Treacle, answered that question by stating that his nephew was an Arlington police officer, but that his relationship would not affect his ability to be impartial, and he said nothing further. That juror was eventually picked to be on the jury, and the jury found the defendant guilty of capital murder and sentenced him to death. After the case was on appeal, Juror Treacle was interviewed by a law student. Treacle indicated that the testimony from the widow was moving, very emotional, and difficult for him because his brother is a sheriff in Norfolk. Treacle also expressed sympathy for law enforcement officers. There are two questions that we need to be answered. First, why didn't the juror disclose that his brother was a sheriff in Norfolk? And second, was defense counsel entitled to know why the juror didn't disclose that information? The matter was already on appeal, but Porter applied for state habeas relief, which was denied, and he appealed to the district court alleging that Juror Treacle's non-disclosure demonstrated actual bias, implied bias, and juror silence, which foreclosed the attorney's ability to conduct an adequate voir dire. He alleged that the juror's brother was a veteran law enforcement officer in Chesapeake County, which is adjacent to Norfolk, and Chesapeake was also the same county where Officer Reeves and his family had lived. Also at that time, community members in Chesapeake were mourning the death of another police officer killed in the line of duty. And significantly, he alleged that after Officer Reeves' murder, Chesapeake and Norfolk police officers joined in the manhunt for Porter. His claim was dismissed by the district court, finding that the juror answered truthfully about his nephew and wasn't asked about any other law enforcement relationships by the attorney. In its review, the U.S. Court of Appeals found that the district court did not hear the actual bias claim on the merits. Now, in an actual bias claim, the complaining party must prove that a juror, because of his or her partiality or bias, was not capable and willing to decide the case solely on the evidence before him or her. There are three things to consider here. First, was a specific question asked? Second, was the non-disclosure inadvertent or intentional? And third, why didn't the juror disclose that his brother was a sheriff? The U.S. Court of Appeals held that the district court erred as a matter of law in dismissing the actual bias claim without conducting discovery or holding an evidentiary hearing. The Court of Appeals came down hard on the district court in how it dismissed the actual bias claim. First, procedurally, Porter alleged well-pled facts, and the trial court must accept well-pled allegations as true. The district court didn't do that, but called the jurors' answers honest and forthright. If you take a look at Porter's well-pled facts, you see that the juror's brother was an officer in Norfolk, in a county that was adjacent to where Officer Reeves and his family had lived. The relationship was not disclosed at voir dire. And also, Chesapeake and Norfolk law enforcement officers joined in a manhunt to find Porter. The U.S. Court of Appeals said that an evidentiary hearing was necessary to sort out the truths. Second, the district court failed to apply a U.S. Supreme Court case on actual bias, holding that a juror's failure to disclose a relationship required an evidentiary hearing. Here we get into the issue of dishonesty. How can it be determined? First, there was a specific question asked. Have you, any member of your family or close personal friend, worked for or with any law enforcement organization, either as an employee or on a voluntary basis? The Court of Appeals indicated that it had previously held that if a juror is asked a specific question, which encompasses two answers, a juror fails to answer honestly a material question on voir dire if he only mentions one of them. The juror's silence suggested an unwillingness to be forthcoming, and the parties are entitled to truthful responses from the jurors. Third, the district court held Porter to an unreasonable standard by misinterpreting the effect of Federal Rule of Evidence 606B, finding that Porter could not testify. That is because there are exceptions to the rule where jurors lie during voir dire in a way that conceals bias. Additionally, non-juror evidence can be used to prove that a juror was lying. Here, there was the affidavit of the law student, and also Porter might have subpoenaed the juror's brother. And juror treacle could be asked about outside influences during an evidentiary hearing. And finally, the district court failed to apply the proper analysis to Porter's hearing request in terms of requiring the attorney to ask if the juror had additional relationships in law enforcement after the juror mentioned his nephew. Was that burden warranted by the law? The U.S. Court of Appeals said no, because it involves a catch-22, requiring the attorney to keep asking questions until the juror's answer is complete, without the attorney knowing if it's complete. Remember, a specific question was asked, and only partially answered. Here, the district court also said that the records showed that the juror did not deliberately omit material information. But the U.S. Court of Appeals said, what record? How could the defendant show that the juror omitted material information without an evidentiary hearing? Simply put, Porter was hindered from developing facts in state court about an actual bias claim. For these reasons, the U.S. Court of Appeals held that the district court erred in dismissing the actual bias claim as a matter of law without discovery and a proper evidentiary hearing. Point blank, juror treacle did not candidly answer counsel's specific question, and Porter was entitled to find out why. This concludes our analysis of the juror misconduct issues in this case. For more information about other juror misconduct cases, our CLE courses, and other updates, please click on the red button. And remember, don't let juror misconduct taint your next verdict. I'm Nilgün Zahour from SM Juror. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.